Awesome. What can I help you with?
So we've been contemplating moving to a business premises. We can't rent from our own home. We have 2 team members, 3 technicians, including my husband and an administration officer and myself. Seems to be outgrowing our home. But I've started looking into premises to rent and just find it astronomically huge amount, but I just don't know if we can afford it, or how do we go from doing what we're doing now to actually being able to, or how do we plan for it really? So how do we plan the numbers so that we can get to a point where we can actually move out?
Good. Give me some context. What's a rent going to be to you? Like, what's a monthly rent payment if you were to move?
They've said about $3,000 a month, I think, plus GST, plus overheads, I think.
Plus outgoings.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the revenue of your business on an average month?
We've just done 75,000 in a quarter.
It's 25 grand a month.
About 25 grand. That's the first time we've hit that. Prior to that, it was sitting at about 20 grand.
Congratulations to you. That's great. You can't afford it yet. That's the short answer. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't move out, but that seems like a very high amount of money to me for a fairly small team. So I think the name of the game for you is, I mean, I always champion getting out of your own home, right? I love running at home, but at some point we've got to make that change, because actually running from home saves you money in the short term, costs you a ton of money in the long term, because when you move out, you take your business more seriously and so forth, right? So it's a good idea to go at home, keep the overhead down, but at some point it's actually costing you money. So I'd be saying jump. Now on the, I mean, you're a growing business, right? So that's a cool sign. On the kind of revenue you're talking about here, I'd be spending between $1,000 and $1,500 a month on a premises. Now, how do you do that? You've just probably got to go and find something half of the size that you were looking at, you know, or put the word out to say, listen, because there would be heaps of businesses in your area who aren't using all the space that they're in. So, you know, you might have the opportunity to jump into them, right? That they may be renting a $4,000 place and you could rent some of it for $1,500 a month, for example. So you could just put the call out on Facebook and say, hey, listen, we need some space. This is our budget. What have you got? And you'll find people. But I reckon if you were to spend 1 year, for example, in a $1,000 to $1,500 a month place, then your 25 grand revenue could very well be 40 to 50 grand revenue in a year if you keep growing. At 50 grand, can you spend 3 grand on rent? It's still tight for me. But you know what spending 3 grand would allow you to do is probably go from 25 grand a month to 40 grand a month to 60 grand a month to 80 grand a month without having to move. And so that would be nice to have that consistency. I think you should do it in 2 stages though. I think you should move to something smaller and then go to something bigger down the line just to reduce the overhead. And that may mean being creative, okay? You know, anybody that's listing a property for 2 grand a month online will maybe take 1,500 for 1 year because their option is not get anything. So I think you should move is my short answer. I don't think you can afford 3 grand a month. And because let me put it to you this way. It's not, I didn't do my maths just because like there's some equation on what is acceptable. I did my maths on this. If you're prepared to spend 3 grand a month, but we can get it down to 1,500 a month, now I've got 1,500 a month to deploy onto Facebook ads, Google ads, you know, another part-time admin assistant, right? It's just about redeploying that money somewhere smarter. And I think three grand is too much for where you are to be deployed on one thing being rent. Yep. So I would stage it out. I would stage it from where you are, you know, hang on where you are until you're absolutely imploding, then jump to something smaller and then jump to something bigger. But I would say you should really get out of home because at some point it'll drag on and it'll cost you a lot more money than it's saving. That doesn't really help you with an answer, except I think it's too much and you got to go and find something smaller. You know, in fact, here's an interesting thought while I've got you. I once was coaching a a plumbing company. They had a team of, I think about 4 technicians and 1.5 office staff. I think that's where they were at. And they got a letter from council to say, sorry, can't operate from home anymore, 30 days to get out. And so they weren't really in a position to go and take on a factory. So what they did was they went and rented one of those Storage King places, right? So they would, and so what, the owner of the business would drive to Storage King at 7 a.m., meet the team, that's where all the equipment was, right? Then he would set his team up and send them out. And that was costing $400 a month. Now, it got him out of the home and it got the boys away from the home, and it meant all the equipment was in one place. So it was a nice little half step to being able to then, they did that for about 18 months until they'd grown the business to the point where they could get their own factory. So I want you to hack at it. I want you to go a little bit slower and find some in-between steps.